I feel very grounded right now. I feel very happy to be in this space, and I'm happy to be sharing this space with Lexi as we as we have a really hopefully a nuanced conversation about some of the imagery that was included in my video collage. That's how I'm kind of framing it. Just what we showed at the beginning of today's program was just a bunch of thoughts, feelings, emotions, reflections, and meditations on what it means to be a Black woman and the origins of my Black feminist politic, which was formed in the 80s and 90s. So I'm excited to talk about it, though. Very excited. Um, Lexi, I guess like this is the time where we just continue to talk. I just want to make sure I'm on target. Let me check the chat. Lexi, yeah, how are you doing today?
You know what? I gotta say, I'm doing so much better now that I've seen your collage, your art.
Yes,
I can't even.
I wanted it to be a surprise, but I know that you and I have had conversations, continuous conversations, including this afternoon earlier. I wanted to surprise you with the content, but it feels like the content is in alignment with a lot of the things that we discussed. Yeah.
No,
So
I absolutely agree. It's
yeah.
just it's just so perfect, and I love it so much. And yeah, I'm glad that you surprised me with it because now I'm coming into this conversation with this regrounding that I think that sometimes you forget we're in a different generation right now. We forget about the just the trailblazedness, that's not a word, but the trailblazedness and the reality of what it meant to be a fly girl at that time. And I also didn't realize how much of that is actually still around. We were talking about it earlier today, and I was just like, it's kind of not really around, don't really see it, but now I actually do. I was reminded, and I think we all need that reminder. And it's just so amazing, all the imagery.
A lot of what was included in the collage was designed to make folks think, right? I included content that wasn't easy to swallow, content that was difficult to watch, content that is either controversial or just antithetical to maybe a lot of maybe forward thinking, progressive Black women. But that's the whole point, is to show the dynamicism that is Black womanhood and to take it from this flattened, I would think, caricature that's drawn up of what Black womanhood could be, to take that flattened caricature and add that, like, that dynamicism, to add that texture, and to add differing voices. And I just think that we're in a world, to me, it feels like Black womanhood has become more and more narrow. Whereas I felt, and this might just be that rose-colored glasses look back at nostalgia, it might be that, I acknowledge that, but I feel like there was a moment in pop culture where there were so many images of Black womanhood that were, it just felt like there was more variety in it, if that makes sense, even though we didn't have social media and things of that nature. So anyway, I just wanted to preface the piece with that. Yeah.
Piggybacking off of something that you had just said, just really talking about how narrow our conception of Black femininity and Black womanhood have been. Also preface that, I'm a little bit of a historian. I'm able to see within those images that, this was very much a sequestered, almost segregated part of our culture in the 80s and 90s. And as 2000s really embarked, and Black women were being pushed more into the mainstream, our voice started to be diluted with this imagery that was platable with white culture, but also platable with just our overall conception of who they want us to be.
Yeah.
And I saw, and you see a lot of that within like movies in like 2000s, like the baby mama trope and like the trope of like the hoochie or all those things, but those words were not used to describe fly girls and Black women in the 80s and 90s. We just were.
Right.
All of us were fly. Right. So, and I think it's telling, there's a whole Sirius XM radio station called Fly, and it's specifically for, early 2000, early 90s to early 90s to the early 2000s for a reason, because this started, that vacuum started, and our voice was kind of just chipped away into the white gaze.
Right, absolutely. It's the weird backlash. I think we see this historically at almost every turn of like a significant moments in this country's history, is whenever there are these strides. Let's say, for instance, Reconstruction. There's this really swift backlash, and we saw it following Reconstruction, especially the experience here in the South. I want to lift that up specifically. You saw Jim and Jane Crow wreak havoc on Black families, Black communities, Black people. I feel the same way about Black women's this period of flyness, this period of flyness that was brought into my periphery, or brought into my line of sight through my sister, initially my late sister, who was over 10 years older than me. So she was fully immersed in carving out her own lane. But yeah, you can make the argument that these images and that this type of art form, in terms of Black women expressing themselves, you could make an argument that there were more varieties then, more pure organic varieties. And so it's not so much that, Lexi, I don't mean to like take from what maybe you might ask later or we might talk about, but you mentioned earlier that, how did the Flygirl lose? How did the Flygirl lose some of these things as she progressed? And I reframed it and like, well, what was taken from her, right? And so much of what makes a Black woman fly, a lot of it is extracted from her and commodified and repackaged with a more palatable, for a more palatable source to dispense it. We see this everywhere. We see this most notably, I would think, in the social media realm, TikTok and IG. So much Black women's flyness, intellectual property, thought. Shoot, even Jaslyn, I hope I'm not bringing up anything untoward, but Jaslyn in bringing this space together talked about, some of her ideas being taken and replicated, right? And it's just something that Black women have to contend with so much. And so I don't know, I said a lot there, but really just my heart aches for what Fly girls have had to lose, what was taken from us.
Absolutely. On the other side of that, the juxtaposition of that, one of the things from your collage that really spoke to me, and I'm so happy you included it, was the agents of whiteness and the agents of supremacy, of patriarchy that were vilifying and redefining in real time what it meant to be a Black fly girl, especially everything that happened with Bill Clinton and Sister Souljah. We had to really, disclaimer, a little bit younger than Mika, but we're just like this. But but in my early teens, right around the time that I started becoming politically active and engaged, from the general Black community, Bill Clinton was a saint. And here I am growing into my 20s and my 30s, having to redefine that and repivot because I read history and I saw in his first campaign what he did to vilify Black women, to say whatever he needed to say to the liberal medium establishment to say that I'm a viable person to be presidency. I can squash this Black woman who literally just told the truth and you'll elect me for it. That is, and I saw that as a huge statement, telling it directly to Black women, like, stay in your place, stay in your lane. And the woman, I didn't even know about her. There's like a whole 2 days I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole, unfortunately.
Oh, was this the Souljah?
No. Yeah, the Black woman.
Oh, I got you. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Bill Clinton Sister Souljah moment. For me, that was a huge moment that I didn't understand at the time. But why I included it in this exhibit was to illustrate, Lexi, you put quite a point on it, to illustrate like some of these figures in our history were supposed to be our biggest allies. And when you look at history honestly and see that one moment where he wasn't quite president, he was running for president at the time, felt emboldened to say what he had to say at an NAACP dinner. So you're in, the Black community has let you in, and you take this moment not to focus on your campaign, but to signal to white America, hey, this Black chick says something really spicy. Let me separate myself right now and chastise her. And then seeing the reaction. How did Black male leaders respond? Did they demand that Bill Clinton apologize? So it was a lot there. But I did also use the word rebuttal to describe this exhibit, and I feel like Black women have always had to rebut these assertions made about us, and it endures. It didn't start in the 80s and 90s, and it endures now in so many different ways that younger generations of Black femmes, women or non-males, a lot of ways that I would never even have to, I could never imagine how sinister these attacks are on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to keep, because this is what we do, we just kind of like keep building and building and building. And even on top of that, I find it very telling that Bill Clinton got on camera and talked about, his admonishment as a soldier, but he would never get on camera, never in the NAACP meeting and talk about the crime bill that he architected with our current president. He wouldn't ever do that because that's political suicide, right? It's political suicide to say that I'm going to throw all these Black men in jail, but let me go ahead and vilify and barbecue this Black woman in front of everybody. And those Black men leaders probably did agree with it. And he was like, yeah, because this is what we see, especially in the South, especially young Black girls. This is how we're portrayed. We're too fast, we're too mouthy, we're too smart.
Yeah.
I forgot her name in the movie. I need to go rewatch it. I think it's still on Netflix, but in Just Another Girl on the IRT.
Oh, Chantel.
Yes. When Chantel said, imagine how they feel when they find out just how smart I am.
Yeah. You gotta watch it.
Entire experience, all in just one sentence.
I just want to say, it's Shamika, right? You just shaking your head and like acknowledging this movie makes me feel so good.
I'm feeling it. And also, that's my movie. Like, I mean, I love movies, period. And it's been a minute since sorry, I don't want to like take space from you all, but I haven't watched movies as much, but when I was watching movies, I'll, center and like look for the stories of Black women. So, John Lonso, by Colleen Smith, and then you have like Almost Rainbow, which is actually really, really hard to find. I wish more people could have access to that. But it's a really good coming of age story of a young woman in the 80s and her relationship with her mother. And I think that's also really important. But the story with Chantal, and my middle name is Chantal.
Mine too.
So, okay, here we go. I just felt a deep connection to her in that sense. Like, oh, she's brainy, she's feisty. Like, I like her. But everything I've been saying so far, just to chime in, but also not take up too much time, has been resonating with me. So thank you.
No, that's why I wanted to pull you in. I would definitely thank you for sharing, because I know I included a lot of references that were quote unquote dated, whatever. Well, I was also making an argument that that Flygirl, I told this to Lexi earlier, Flygirl, even though the word girl is in there, that might denote youth. I believe that, women are fly girls, Black women are fly, like our fly is inherent, right? And our flyness just is a part of us. And I was so happy in making that argument. I'm also saying that, like that movie, those images endure. And I'm so happy. I'm just happy connected with someone, because, and these movies are rare. Even when I first watched that movie, I know I'm much older than most folks in the room, but when I watched the movie, I found it on VHS in my college library, and then it became a hunt to find other movies. And then as I got older, Daughters of the Dust, and discovering all these other movies that really present womanhood or Black women in a different light, and more texture and more depth. And yeah, it's a search for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I would say that, like you, when I'm hunting for these stories, I would actually, because I still have a library card, I would actually use the library, and the library is a really good resource. And I think that a lot of people don't tap into it enough. But there's so many movies there.
Yeah, I always quote, if you follow my platform, you'll know that I lift up the library, not because I'm an old curmudgeon, but because it is one of the most subversive institutions that exist. And yeah, a lot of our story is in the archive. A lot of our stories as Black women are in historical Black newspapers. Not many have been digitized, but they're the ones that have been digitized. You know, they tell a story, and we see what it was like to be a Black woman in, let's say, a Charleston or Wilmington, North Carolina. You know, the library is just a way you can kind of come in contact with these women that were just fighting tooth and nail to just carve out a space for themselves, fight for bodily autonomy. You know, I made this piece, even though I didn't want to get too graphic in terms of imagery that struggle with that deal with our lack of bodily autonomy. But this state lifts up a hero like Marion Sims, dedicates statues to a man who tortured Black women, Black enslaved women for medical advancement, right? And again, I bring that up not to be triggering, not to be offensive or gratuitous, but you know, the discussion of flyness cannot be complete until we talk about bodily autonomy and we were here to just breed and to give labor. We were not designed to do anything else but to yield labor and to breed. And so when those things become no longer something we offer you, what do they do with us? And we become disposable. How do we fight that? What's our rebuttal? Those are just some thoughts. Yeah.
I think you bring up a really good point just about how like distorted and objectified, hypersexualized the Black femme body is and why, and that history of that, and how that then connotes to like other aspects of our identity being stripped away from us, not being associated with who we are as a people and as a culture. So I really appreciate that. I did also, just because we are at going to get into the Q&A, and I think that's a really great bridge to kind of segue into maybe just like expanding on your thoughts, especially in context to like when we think about contemporary Flygirls as well, like how does that lineage kind of continue itself? Like, I mean, Thought Shit just got released by Megan Thee Stallion, which I feel like is definitely kind of like a part of this like vernacular. It's a part of this conversation in its own way. And it's interesting to me because it's two juxtaposing approaches to it. Queen Latifah was always covered. The way that she like kind of takes agency over her body is a lot different than how Megan does it. So yeah, anyway, those are just like I guess a question on some of your thoughts about that in relation to your work. And then yeah, just gonna segue into the Q&A, and I'm also gonna continue to drop some of the links from earlier as well for everyone.
Sure. Yeah, I can't wait to hear any questions that may have come up for folks. It's interesting you brought up like contemporary, and I definitely see I see the fruit of the finest tree in some of our more contemporary voices, like a Meg Thee Stallion. You know, like you could just name it, but not only do I see it there, oddly enough, I see the fruit of Black women's flyness. I see it in K-pop. I see it, you know, them jacking off fresh, like taking everything that was fly from the 90s and making it this new repackaged Asian version that has, you know, is hugely popular, but it's influenced directly. Yeah, you can argue also maybe some New Jack Swing, like black male R&B, but no, it was Black women. It was the Aaliyah, it was TLC, it was those groups that these K-pop artists are imitating and bringing back and making it, you know, making it more of a trend. But with Megan, I do see the audacity, and I just included Queen Latifah self-indulgently because she's from New Jersey, I'm from New Jersey. But I could have just as easily. I wanted to show that we did also demonstrate like our sexuality was expressed. TLC to me was such a huge like sexual expressive in a tomboy package, but TLC was sexy. I mean, they came out with condoms over their eyes and all over their body, like, and they're telling you about, you know, I ain't too proud to beg, you know, I know what I want sexually. So I see that audacity, that audaciousness. I see that in a Meg. I see that in a Cardi. I see that in you know, all of the dolls, all of them, Asian, Persian, whatever, China, all the dolls. But no, I see it there, and it endures. And like I said, it's not specific to the 80s and 90s. I think the 80s and 90s gave birth to this type of hugely expressive, but they're even just a carbon copy of what what took place back in the 20s and the turn of the 20th century. So yeah.
Definitely. We'd like to open up for anyone who has any additional questions or any thoughts as well. So please feel free to chime in. In addition, I also wanted to note at 5 p.m. we will be hosting a herbal sound bath, herbal medicine with Yves B. Golden of Herbal Mutual Aid Network, HMON, and I'll be dropping a link for that as well. So just a little announcement.
Well, I'm going to take this opportunity. I actually have a couple of questions, so I would love to just hop right in. I think that you definitely, Mika, you definitely touched on this earlier, but when you created this collage, who in the collage would you say means the most to you and why?
Oh gosh, I don't know who. I think some of the images represent women who define when I heard their voices on television, on the radio, I snapped up. That would be like I included a picture of Salt and Pepper at the outset. I didn't include any audio, but Salt and Pepper was another, that duo to me reminded me of my sister a lot. Salt and Pepper both looked like my sister. My sister cut her hair like them. My sister did her makeup like Salt and Pepper. And I think just seeing that these two young girls from around the way who looked and sounded like my cousins, like my sister, go out there and talk about sex, talk about pushing it, talk about, all these things. My mic sounds nice, just all this amazing things, wearing these big door knocker earrings, these bamboo earrings. It just, to me, the things that remind me of my sister most is like Salt and Pepper, for sure.
Amazing. No, that's great. I think that what I'm hearing you say a lot is really you're attracted to the audacity.
Yeah.
And when we're attracted to audacity, we'll just kind of follow it, come hell or high water, right? And this is people from, women from even Blaxploitation eras who's giving us this very male gaze, but taste of Black femininity, Black power, and the audacity, and really putting it into a very modern age.
That's a really good comparison, right? So the women that came before me, they might have had Blaxploitation, so they might have had a Pam Grier's Coffee, they might even watch the Spook Who Sat by the Door, right? And then had introduced to certain conversations about what Black women's beauty looked like. Abby Lincoln was in a lot of movies. One of my favorite jazz artists. But there were so many images, there were so many other eras that I just don't have a connection to. But that's a really good comparison, though, in terms of, certainly variations of flyness, for sure.
Variations of flyness. It's like a whole show. It's random acts of flyness.
Amazing.
No, that's great. I mean, I think that's someone who really just kind of, as soon as I saw her, I saw Queen Latifah, who I've always just held in my heart as someone super, super special to me. As someone who was tall, and was bigger in her frame. And if we're going to be inclusive, we're going to talk about how the flyness didn't have a certain size to it, but it was definitely on the outlier. But just able to articulate a very deep message of freedom and solidarity, and also just be really cool all at the same time, and break out into different branches of medium. That's what I really take from Queen Latifah. She was a rapper, a singer, an actress, all these things within a 7-year time period. The versatility of her career told me that I can also do the same thing. I don't have to be just one thing.
I think that's it, right? Coloring outside the lines. It's seriously, if I didn't have, and I mentioned this before in the private conversation, Lexi, if I didn't have my mother, who was a woman, a Jim Crow refugee, so she left the Jim Crow South, started a family, ended up in New York City, right? Ended up, I believe, in the Bronx. And this country woman with high school diploma, just trying to find her way and learning really early on. I have to create almost every opportunity that I have to create everything. And my mom was an entrepreneur. And if it wasn't, you said earlier that I was attracted to the audacity. I'm drawn to, I feel like I was surrounded with just these fly, amazing survivors. And people like my mom. And I think it's those images like Queen Latifah who project strength that really get my attention. And they come in all sizes and shapes. They really do, and ages. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about like your story of, your family, your mother, and like, I didn't have that. We were refugees who stayed in North Carolina. However, I didn't have women in my family. We were all nurses. They were all nurses. They were all very, not to knock the profession, but very subservient roles. And also very hard links to Christianity. Kojic and things of that nature. I grew up with that, and I grew up understanding that there was something inherently wrong with the system because none of the Black women around me were happy. And I was raised with a ton of Black women, just so many. I have so many aunts I can't even count. But none of them were happy. And I looked at people like Queen Latifah and TLC and Mary, just as these women who were just like, there's a different way. It was kind of like this whisper along the land. There's a different way. We can be this. It's independence. It's all that.
And also, like, it's not easy, right? It's not easy too. We've seen the cost that many in the limelight, many Black women, like, it doesn't come for free. And whatever institution that you're in, it can really. I don't want to romanticize it either, right? It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for my sister. She used to get in trouble a lot in school. She was mouthy, I think flyness has a price as well. And so I didn't want to romanticize it, and I wanted to complicate it by bringing forth some people problematic women and whatnot. But I think we all should exist. And just like it is every freaking flavor of white boy bland, Black women, we should have the same varieties. We should be able to be lame. We should be able to be like mediocre and still exist and be successful in that mediocrity, just like a white boy. And not to say that that's our standard, but we should be able to exist as they're able to be as banal as they are. So
yeah, I think that Black women are going to get vilified and punished no matter what they do, even if Black women conform to patriarchy or Black women conform to whiteness. The powers that be are always going to find something to punish Black women for. I grew up not to be mouthy. I grew up and as an adult, I chose to be, but as a child, I wasn't, and still got suspended every year for just little infractions, things like that. So I think that flyness is something that's like, okay, if you're going to just punish me and already put me in a box, I might as well go ahead and lean into that box and do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And which I find incredibly powerful.
It's incredibly powerful.
Okay. Yeah, how we doing on time? This is so great. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. That really resonates with me because I'm always thinking about how I can police myself, my behaviors, and I'm not at that point just yet where I'm gonna lean into it. But it's a lot of food for thought. Thank you for that. As far as time goes, I do think we're into segueing into closing remarks at this time. So. Shamika, I don't know if that was you doing it or if
Yeah, this is me. I would say thank you all. Thank you, Mika. Thank you, Lexi, for being here in conversation. I did not know how much this would be filling, but it's filling. It's more than that. And I think that's all I gotta say.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad I just connected, even if it's with one person, I'm glad it connected. That's the whole point. Yeah.
And then this is recorded. So this is an archive. There'll be people out there who will find you through the internet, through the interwebs. So thank you all for coming to Black Beyond's Origins. Have a good night.
Thank you.